I am so excited to be here for the One Word Summit, and I am so happy that you decided to join us. And this has been a big week. And so I just wanted to kind of start off and give you a little bit of an update. I hope if you're here, you probably have a copy of your book. Sorry, weird camera thing. Just one word. This has just been a very wild, interesting, fun, almost yesterday I was actually describing to someone I almost had like a love hangover, like the day after you do a release event like we did on Tuesday, just so many people coming out of the woodwork online and in person at the event in Boulder, and it was just like a really, really special experience to see 13 years of this specific work on top of so many years before that of people coming out and showing their love and appreciation and just community. We really need each other. Um, so anyway, Zoom is always changing all of their settings. And the fun thing about webinars is that you can't really figure out what they've changed until you're in it. So so we're going to be figuring this out as we go along. So the first thing I just want to start off with is a request for grace as we do this. I have some really amazing special guests in addition to me sharing the content from the book here today. So there's going to be some moving parts, but we're going to figure it out. And I hope you just want to get comfortable and hang out with us for the next few hours. I do want to begin with some housekeeping things, just because I first and foremost understand 3 hours is a long time to do anything, especially on a computer. Um, but we are going. There is a structure to this, and really, let me begin with my intent for doing this. I don't. I've never heard of an author doing this before, and the reason that I wanted to do this was probably stemming from a question that I got at the book launch event on Tuesday. A gentleman in the crowd who I actually did not know. So he was somebody who just heard about the event. He asked a question. He was like, can we do this on our own? You know, like this is a book that basically teaches you how to dig yourself, how to take your own self through the process to get to your story, to get to the bigger themes that are over your story, and to actually distill that whole thing down to just one word. And, I always like to be as honest and transparent about where I'm at in my own process as possible. And I basically said to this guy, I was like, this is new. For 13 years, I have done oftentimes multiple hour sessions with my clients to go through this process. And in writing the book over the past few years, I have built more and more confidence that this is absolutely something someone can do on their own. And it's the first time we're trying to do it. I've led digs privately. I've led digs for romantic partners and business partners, so as duos. I've led them as small groups, as small as 4, all the way up to like probably 12 is probably the biggest small group. And then I've taught like big workshops where people were partnered up to help each other. But this is really in this book format, it's really the first time that people are going to themselves through the process. And so the truth is, I'm curious. I'm curious how we do here. And I very much want to hear your whole experience through the process. But one of my intentions for doing this One Word Summit today was so that I could actually teach some of the content that's in the book, just in case somebody finds anything confusing, because it is a self-guided process. So, and not only did I want to do this for here today, but I really wanted you to have a place to go if you find yourself in 3 months or 3 years, 3 decades. I don't know when you're going to actually dig this. I hope sooner than later, but I want you to have a place to go for support materials so that you can make this journey a bit easier. And I actually have a link that we were continuously building here. If I can find my chat, I'll put it in. But it's basically, let's see. All right. The chat has disappeared, but we'll figure it out. Let me just say the link for you. So it's basically erinweed.com/just one word. And this is actually the same link that is repeated throughout the book. And what we are essentially wanting to do with this page is that this is a page only for people who've bought the book, for you to have worksheets, videos, case studies, examples. There's a link to attend this summit here today. And all of the video that we record here today is actually going to live on this page. And I think what we're going to do is actually have it broken down into the three parts that I'm going to take you through here today. So you can kind of pop in, have video resources for any time that you might need a little extra support when you go through this. So really, that was my intention. My intention is to make this as easy as humanly possible for you. And for me, there's a big reason for this. The big reason is because I want a more authentic world, and that begins with the individual. It begins with us having a tool and a way to discover how to do that. Because the truth is, our societies don't always set things up so that we can be totally authentic. So I want to give people a framework and make it as easy as possible for you. So that's really the intent. Um, and I am able to get Q&As. So if you have Q&As, please just put your question in there. And Lisa asks, can you please restate the website link? Yes, so it's erinweed.com/just one word, all one word. All right. So let's talk about the format of today, just so that you can budget your time and your energy accordingly. It's going to be broken down into three parts, because if you have your book, you know there are three parts to the book. And we felt that that made it easiest because it's almost like you need three different mindsets to do the three different parts. And so if you open up your table of contents, you can see part one is about setting your foundation. So this is really where we begin. Before we actually go and do the dig process, we want to just start getting a feel for the why we're doing this, for how we familiarize with the different tools that are going to help us in the dig, and also to begin almost the habitual practice of being authentic, so that when we get into part two, that's when I'm actually going to take you through the process, like step by step. And I will have guests on in each of these sections who will talk a little bit more about either their experience with the dig or their experience in general in the world in that subject matter that we're talking about. So, and then part three is going to be our last part, and that is about aligning your life. And if you've ever wondered, okay, this one word thing looks interesting, cool, maybe, but like, what the hell do I do with this? That's going to be part three, because I want people to know exactly what they're going to do with their word, how to infuse it into your life, into your work, into your message, into all the things. And so we're going to have guests for each of these after I do some teaching. So I'm going to do about 30 minutes of teaching in each of the three parts. Then we're going to do about 20 minutes, give or take, of discussion with our amazing guests. And then we're going to take a break leading into the end of the hour. So at about 50 after the hour, I'm on Mountain Time, so it's 10:10 now. Around 10:50, I'm shooting to take a break, so everybody can have about 10 minutes between the different sections. Here's why I'm doing that. I mean, first of all, it's just Zoom, right? Like everybody gets Zoom fatigued, so that's just a thing. But there is something to taking time to drop into content after you've digested it a bit, or after you've ingested it to be able to digest it. And I think sometimes in this culture of just nonstop getting more info, getting more content, it's like we don't take a minute to just like let it land and to start thinking about how it actually applies in our life. And so I want to start creating that habit as you go through this book, that this is not a race. This is, I love taking my time with this purpose sort of work. And one thing that I've learned about doing this work is that in order to have clarity, you need to have calm. The calm needs to come first. And for anybody who's ever worked with me privately, you know that whether we're meeting on Zoom or you're coming to my office, like there is an experience that I create in order to make people feel safe and to bring calm. And this is environmental. This is like, even from the place of time, scheduling time, making sure there's no distractions, because we need that calm in order to do this seeking work. You can't expect yourself to be frazzled and stressed and having major ahas about your purpose in your life. Or I'm just not evolved enough for that. Maybe you are, but so we want to work on that calm. Let's get off the dopamine train for a bit and just like have spaciousness between all these three sections. All right. So, um, let's talk about recording because that's a question I've been getting a ton. I think just because people are traveling, so a lot of people signed up for this that can't actually be here today. Have no fear. Everybody's going to get an auto replay from Zoom, and then I'll also, as I mentioned, have it on the website. Um, let's see. Um, so, doing some tech things in the background here. Because one of the things, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have some amazing guests, and one person is who I just made a panelist is Beck Seidel, and I'm hoping that they can hop on here and talk a little bit about the launch week that we've had so far before we go into all the content. Beck created a pretty incredible experience on Tuesday. So, in your own words, what's it been like for you?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
You're on, yep.
Awesome. This is so organic. Thank you. I literally just texted you I'm on and I'm available. So yeah, at Boulder Bookstore Tuesday evening, you gave this talk, and I guess it was a packed audience at the bookstore, and something just hit me to say, hey, there's got to be a lot of dig words in the room. So, what if we all offer those up to you and the audience? So the audience stood up, and 18 people shared their dig word. And it was really a sweet experience. Later in the evening, a few of us went out afterwards, and I couldn't remember, I didn't know another person, but I knew her dig word. So I just kind of across the room was like, hey, Dharma! Like, and everyone was like, so it was amazing. And I just think, the other thing that struck me is you had family in the room, and your daughter and your mom had their dig words. And that was just really touching to me, Erin, the genuine realness of you sharing what you do with your family and the rest of us. It just really touched me. So I just want to say thank you for putting just one word out for more people to be able to do their dig. And if you're on and you haven't done a dig and you'd like to do it with Erin, I highly, highly recommend. This is absolutely an advertisement.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yeah. It was definitely a really cool experience to have so many people in the room who've gone through the process, and I was actually witness to that when you were like, "Hey Dharma." Like it's actually kind of hilarious once people start figuring out their word. It's like there's almost an identity in it. And I don't think it's like a identity in the way that restricts you. It's almost like identity in the way that liberates you, which
Well, and you know
hilariously
what you just
enough,
said, right? You know.
would you like to share your word?
It's liberation, right? So the other thing that struck me too was you saying again that you've done this with, over 1,000 people, thousands of people, and you remember everybody's words. So I think the genuineness of what you do in person with people is just an important thing to pinpoint. My word is liberation. And I did the dig with Erin end of last year with a friend, Marina Suhulutsky. So it was a wonderful experience to do that with another person. And I work on my own now. I'm a solopreneur and I'm building a company. And liberation isn't on the marquee, but it is behind everything I'm doing. And it has informed me in a way that has been, well, liberating, right? To have a sense of there's something I'm tethered to, I'm anchored to, that's informing what I'm doing. So, of course, I'm building a Beck AI brain, and the brain knows that liberation is behind everything that we're doing. I think the last thing I'd say that was really informative when I did the dig in person with you is because we did it over 2 days with two of us, I let it soak for a night. and the word shaped just a little differently the next morning. So where we had landed was freedom. And now I understand from this work that freedom is a multiple stacking experience of what liberation actually is. So I just want to encourage folks that are doing the dig and finding their one word to know that it is a process, right? And the last thing I'll say is my wife was in the audience Tuesday evening, and she's asking me like, "Okay, do you think my word is this? And would it be that? And I think it's this." And I said, "Well, Erin says whatever you think it is when you do the dig, it's likely to be different. So I
Probably not.
I can neither confirm nor deny that your word is what you think it is in this moment. So trust the process, as we said.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beck, for joining us. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
All right. Okay. Um, I love just having real people pop in throughout. So I think I'm just as excited for all of our amazing guests we're having hop in here today as I am to share the content with you because I have such good people. Anyway, if you are going to be a guest speaker or panelist, I just want to give you all just a little tech update. Basically, just be here at the time that we talked about, and I'll turn you into a panelist, and then you just appear. So easy peasy. All right, well, I want to get um, into the content and to just start talking a little bit about part one before we move into a discussion about it. And feel free to send me Q&A as they come up, and I'll do my best to answer those questions as I'm going through that section. Also, if we don't have time to answer it in this session, because we have the book resources page at the erinweed.com/just one word, I can just keep adding more things there as I learn about different things that might be helpful to you as the reader to go through this process. So just put them in the questions, and I'll do my best to keep making this a very robust experience and learning for you. So if you have your book with you, feel free to pull it out. As you can see, I've like marked everything up and all my, and now I have like shredded sticky notes. And speaking of which, it might be helpful today if you have a Sharpie, if you have a stack of sticky notes. Um, Anybody who knows me personally knows I don't leave the house or really a room without them because you just never know when something's going to pop in. But it might be helpful to have those around because, especially in later chapters, if things just kind of come to you during the session, I want you to have total freedom to be able to just jot things down and get them out of your head. And the reason that sticky notes and Sharpies are actually important is because it's kind of like a kinesthetic experience, you know? Like when you think a thought and then you pick up your Sharpie and you're like writing it down and putting it on a piece of paper, well, now you've just really deposited that thought from your head outside of you. And I think that's a real important part of the dig process because when we do introspection from the place of just being internal the whole time, it's really hard to get objectivity on it. But when we take it out of ourselves and we can look at it out here, then all of a sudden you could be a bit more neutral about it. And I just find that to be helpful in this whole discovery process. So sticky notes, Sharpies, really good friend to have. Chapter one um, is the beginning of part one, which is so fun. And I believe it's on page 24 for anybody who's following around along. But this is all about the three C's. The three C's is uh, C's that stack on top of each other. Now, this kind of started when I first started coaching. I was working with a lot of TED speakers, and people would just be like, just call me up and be like, hey, I hear you're the person who helps people go viral and all the things and everything. And I'm just like, well, I don't think it's like that. Like there are companies that are set up to like they make people go viral or they get the views. And that's not what I do. I get people so ridiculously clear and confident about who they are, what they stand for, and how to express it in a short amount of time that they can't help but to connect. So myself and this process, it's one of the earlier C's than connection. So connection should be on on the end of the three C's. So the first C is clarity. I always start with clarity because if you don't feel clear, it's very hard. to put yourself out there externally. If you don't feel internally like you know who you are, of course you're going to be nervous about putting yourself out there in the world because you don't have the next C, which is that confidence. Confidence directly comes from clarity. So the more clear you are, the more confident you're going to become. This is a natural organic process. This is not something that anybody really decides. Think about in your own life, think about a topic that you just know so much about. It could be coaching soccer, it could be art, it could be communications or marketing or whatever you do for a living. It could be math. Just think about that thing where if somebody just said, "Hey, I need you to like explain to a group of people on this topic and you have 10 minutes to prepare," you'd be like, "I don't need 2 minutes. Like I am so supremely confident in this topic because I'm so incredibly clear about it." So that's what we're trying to create, but for ourselves, for our own purpose, for our own why. Because when you get that ridiculously clear on your own why, then you're going to be that naturally confident in who you are as a person. Confidence is something that I believe is very difficult to fake. And I mean, as a speaker coach, there are a lot of other people in my industry where, they're teaching performance, right? I think that's a bit different. I think performance is a skill that we learn to deliver our content in a way that connects with people. But that's different than confidence. Like confidence is a feeling. Confidence is a vibe. Like when you meet somebody who has confidence, you just know they're confident, right? And so, and you could also kind of sense if someone's faking it or just acting a certain kind of way, and it doesn't feel genuine to you. So, so by starting with the clarity, that confidence is naturally going to occur. And once you have that, it makes connection easier. Have you ever seen maybe somebody leading a workshop, or maybe you even had a teacher, and they just seemed really, really nervous talking to people? And then you notice, oh man, now I'm starting to feel nervous because it's painful to watch. We had a situation a few years ago at TEDx Boulder where a speaker just literally forgot all their lines. It was a year that I actually wasn't teaching or I wasn't coaching that year. I had to take the year off. And so I was just a person in the audience, but my heart was exploding for this person because they just were lost up there, and there's like 1,500 people in the room and they're just like having this moment. And and I really think that a lot of it had to do with the fact that that person was just missing the confidence and maybe the clarity of their message. And so what happens is then you miss the third C, and the third C is connection. Connection, I just don't think you can fake that either, Like, and spoiler alert, if y'all don't know, my big word is authentic. So that's all I care about. I just want realness. And one of the reasons I want is because I think that's the thing that always works the most. And if you want to actually make a true connection with a person, it starts with being authentic. It starts with truly being yourself. So, so those three C's stack on each other: clarity, confidence, connection. And so the dig was actually invented because I knew from working with these TEDx speakers that they were lacking the clarity. And so then they're lacking the confidence, and then they're lacking the connection. And so if we start at the beginning, that is how we remedy it. So I want to just scoot forward into chapter 2, which is something I call the resonance meter. The resonance meter is basically a fun way of explaining intuition. That feeling that you get when you know something's true or you know something's not true. For example, let's say you're house hunting. You need to find a new home, and your real estate agent takes you around to all these different properties, and you walk in one, and the resonance meter, which in my mind's eye, I almost see it as like a speedometer on your car. So you have like 0, you have 100, and then you have a whole bunch of numbers in between, and it's moving all the time, right? So your resonance meter, your intuition is essentially the same thing. And so you walk into this house that your real estate agent brings you into, and you immediately are like, hell no. Like you just get it, that feeling in your body. You have like no resonance with this property. And you might be blaming it because of like specific things. Oh, I don't like wood floors, or I don't like arches or whatever you're into or not into. But on some level, your intuition is just like thumbs down. On the flip side, maybe like the third or fourth house your agent brings you to, you're like, oh, you walk into the apartment or the home and you're just like, this is what home feels like. And it's that feeling of resonance. This is true for me, right? So the same thing applies when we're doing this dig process is there's going to be times later in the process when we're really starting to look at these one word themes that pop up out of your story. And it's going to be up to you to say, okay, this really resonates with me. This would be like a 92 on my resonance speedometer. Or that just doesn't quite feel right. Maybe it's more like a 5. And so we need to start building our belief in our own resonance meter and stop second guessing it. Stop questioning it because when we question it, it becomes a habit of us denying our own intuition. And if you're getting those kinds of feelings about something, either getting the thumbs up or the thumbs down, what if we could actually just make a life of like almost all thumbs ups? You know what I mean? And so the more we listen to our resonance meter, the more we follow the flow, the better off our life is going to be. But it takes practice to do it, because I think we just kind of live in a culture that denies our intuition a lot. So go against the grain, trust your resonance meter, and really tap into it. The final thing I want to talk about in part one here is chapter 3, which is on page 59, in case you're following along. And this is a head, heart, core. I actually just had a link today show up, a major media hit called Super Age. And this is just such a cool publication. They have over 1 million subscribers, and they're all about helping people build lives that are long and healthy and thriving. And I have a very close relationship with Super Age, and they reached out and they wanted to do a whole excerpt on the Head, Heart, Core chapter. So I think what I'm probably going to do is just send a follow-up email to everybody on this call to send you all these links that I'm probably going to be talking about here since I can't figure out how to do the chat right now. But basically, it was an excerpt on this. And in Head, Heart, Core I often call them the 3 truths. It's based on my belief that at any given point in time, we have 3 truths that are running. We have a factual truth, and that's in our head. These are facts that are undisputedly true, like your name, where you live, if you have a pet. These are factual truths. And then you have a heart truth. These are emotions. These are things that you're feeling at any given moment. Nobody can argue your emotional truth, right? You're the only person who knows what your emotional truth is, and it's constantly changing, constantly fleeting. Our emotions are like water, they're moving. And then you also have, and as I'm holding my gut here, you have the core. This is the core of us also has a truth, and this truth is based in desire. It's what you want. So really the way that we break it down is I think, I feel, and I want. And when you put those 3 truths together, you have a very cohesive statement of what's fully true for you. And the reason this is important is because for so many of us, we're just walking around going through life and actually spending most of our time in just one, maybe 2 of those truths. For example, I work a lot with Google. So I'm always doing workshops and coaching with them. And there are a lot of people who work at Google. They're tech people. They're very heady, right? Not everyone, of course, but a lot of them are in their heads a lot. And when we do a head, heart, core exercise, which is something I do a lot in my workshops and keynotes to like expand people in an experiential way outside of just where they operate, they start to feel this like incredible sense of relief because they're like, wow, like there's so much more to me that's not getting expressed and it's in there, it's just not getting out. And when we only stay in one of our truths, it's unfortunate because it's almost like we're not letting people access us in the most authentic form. Also, from a communication standpoint, if you maybe you can relate to this. Have you ever met a person and you're like, "Oh yeah, how's life going?" And they like maybe just go into the heart and they're just like, "Oh my God, it's been so hard." And this terrible thing happened and this terrible thing happened. And I lost my job and my dog died and blah blah blah, and you're just like, whoa, you just get blown over by like all of the heart stuff. And of course it's real and it's authentic, but it's also one piece. It's missing facts, it's missing desires, it's missing things. And so what happens is that people get a little lost in that, or they get overwhelmed by it. And so what we want to do, especially when we're doing external communications, when we really need to make sense in a short amount of time for people, is we want to be inclusive of the whole thing. And the reason that this is going to be important as we go through the dig process is that this is how we need to tell our stories. Because if we only tell our story when we get to that chapter where we're going to be essentially extracting, if we just tell the story from one of these places, we're going to be missing a lot of words. We're going to be missing a lot of key information that's going to help lead us to what your one word could be. So start just thinking about, okay, like as I'm sharing, as I'm putting stuff out there, I usually talk about this story from the perspective of the head, but what if I talked about this story, and you can insert any story, by the way, just childhood, for example. You can tell the story of your childhood with facts. You could tell the story of your childhood with feelings. You could still tell the story of your childhood with desires, right? Putting them all together, and it just makes the full story make sense. So, so those are that's a quick overview of those three chapters. But as you can see, what I'm doing in that situation is I really just wanted to start laying the groundwork for the tools that we're going to need in order to actually do the dig. So it's so much more than just doing the dig. It's actually like having the tools to do it. And so that's pretty much our step one. And now I want to start shifting to a bit more of a discussion about these sorts of concepts. And I have two people here today. Before they turn on their cameras and stuff, I'm just going to talk about them. First, we have David Meerman Scott, who was actually on, I think was maybe the first guest of my podcast when I started doing the dig in this like flash 1 hour format. So I'll have him share his experience a little bit about that. But we go actually way, way, way back because David is an incredible speaker, author. I think he's written like 10, 12 books. Like, I mean, just like it's so mind-boggling to me, the awesomeness that is this guy. But he's also really been a friend to me for many years. He wrote about me in one of his books called Worldwide Rave back when I was doing Girls Fight Back, which, if you're not familiar with my Girls Fight Back years, my between 2001 and 2013, I ran a company called GFB, Girls Fight Back, and we basically taught women's safety and self-defense seminars at high schools and colleges across the world. So it was kind of like ass kicking in seminar format for like hundreds, sometimes thousands of girls packed into an auditorium or a school gym. That was basically my crash course in public speaking. And it was a pretty amazing ride. And David wrote about some of the things that I did early on to try to spread the word about women's safety and self-defense and what we're capable of. But then we just became friends. So anyway, I'm just like super grateful for you, David. And then Pam Slim is also somebody I have a few people that are gonna showing up on this call today that I think share some responsibility in this book even happening. And Pam is one of those people because she's really helped me claim my body of work. So I hired her as my coach, which I believe we all need coaches. We all need people to see us and help us and get us past our stuck points. And so she really helped me turn the dig into something that I later certified people to facilitate and ultimately this book. So if you both want to turn on your mics and cameras, and so happy to see you both. Hello, hello.
Hey, hey.
Hey, so good, so happy to be here.
Maybe we'll start with you, David. Do you want to do just like a quick little self intro and how you came to be in this whole dig thing?
You did a great job, Erin. So thanks very much. But yeah, I was really intrigued by the idea of doing a dig, and I thought I knew kind of where the direction was going to be. I shared with Erin. I think she already knew. I'm a big fan of the Grateful Dead. I'm a fan of surfing. I'm a fan of the Apollo Lunar Program. So I thought we would go down that direction, but we ended up with the word alive, which really was obvious when Erin said the word, but was not obvious to me as I was going into the process. So and it's been a word to live by. So it's super exciting to have gone through that process with the authentic person herself. And I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. And I got my book yesterday.
Yay.
Yay.
Awesome. Pam.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And that word feels so fitting. David and I have also known each other for a long time. So it's so fun to see the threads, that
Yeah.
tie our stories together. But it is really powerful. I have not done my dig. So I was just
Ooh.
like, what is my word? And I just listened to your podcast with Jonathan Fields. And what I'm just so excited to see the way in which it's going to be impacting people as we sort of dig into the topic because it's so germane to figuring out things I spend my time thinking about really how to have alignment between the quality of our life and the quality of our body of work. And just when you have that thread, you can have a story that ties a body of work together, but to have a word is so powerful and focusing in many ways. So I can't wait to
Mhm.
dig in with you.
Pam, what would you say is the role of authenticity in this work, especially for the people who are on today's call, who are maybe wanting to write or wanting to speak or wanting to share their message somehow?
It's the world that we live in a lot. It's authenticity is a word I know we hear all the time. One of my favorite things a client asked me once is, how can I appear to be authentic online? And I was like, well, let's start with being authentic.
Yeah.
But we know in the dynamic of truly knowing yourself and being yourself and making a connection between the ways that we need to be connecting with others. When we talk about who we are in our authentic selves, there's who we are privately at home with our families, all of our myriad of interests, as David is talking about. And then when we're also building a body of work or we have a business or a career, there's ways in which we know that we need to be connecting with people. And there's not always, we can't always share every single ingredient, right? It's not interesting for people. And I think it's also interesting to be reflecting, are there things that are just uniquely ours for us as humans that we're not always necessarily sharing with everybody? So sometimes I feel like there's a marketing side of we know that we have more resonance with people where they can sense that we are being truthful, that we are aligned in our message and the work that we're creating is really connected to our skills, strengths, our best selves, and that we're not doing anything duplicitous of just sharing one message in a way to try to get people's money or get influence. I think people can feel that sense of authenticity that translates into trust.
Mm.
But what I think is like interesting in the dimension of it, which is like if that's your whole word, is so interesting, is there is that human reflection about what are all the different parts of who we are and how do we want to be sharing um, the parts, with the rest of the world. I think I've sort of been very open book for many years. I'm just like, it's just too much to think about of how I'm curating, who I
Mm.
am. So it's like, you like me or you don't, and that's okay. But I know other people are very private about other parts of their life, and I totally understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can riff on that a little bit, Erin,
Yeah.
I agree with you, everything you just said, Pam. And I've been studying fandom now for 20 years. I wrote a book called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. I wrote a book called Fanocracy. My newest one is called The Fandom Playbook. I am dug into this idea of fandom. And it turns out personal fandom, in other words, people who become fans of you, is very related to this idea of authenticity. And I found a specific thing that's very surprising, and that is most people have a brick wall between their professional self on LinkedIn or wherever it is and their personal self on Instagram or whatever it is, as well as in person. And to become authentic, one of the easiest ways you can do it is to break down that brick wall and say, here's what I'm passionate about in my personal life. Share that in your business life. That's why I have three of the things that I love in this video shot right now: Grateful Dead, Apollo Lunar Program, surfing. I don't have Dancing Lindy Hop, which is my newest my newest love. But I talk about those things in business all the time. And when you have that big fat brick wall barrier, you don't really come across as authentic because I'm just a business person. That's the only thing I care about. Show us who you are as a full person. And that is a very, very fundamental beginning of how you can break out and become super authentic.
Yeah, I actually gave my only TEDx talk that I've given was on the topic of the difference between transparency and authenticity.
Hmm.
I think sometimes people mush those together. Pam, what you were saying earlier is like, okay, maybe people don't need the full story all the time, right? But and everybody has their different comfort level, but I think you can still be real without having to like, open up the whole closet of skeletons and letting them tumble out. And I mean, I know having gone through like a divorce and, all these other things. I know Pamela, you've recently shared about other personal things in a very public setting. Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I do. It's really funny. I also going through a divorce, very amicably, thankfully. But I was like, why was that my most popular LinkedIn post ever? It was like I've been sharing thought leadership content for so many years. But maybe it's part of what David is saying is it is connective to people. Again, I think it's still with discernment about the way that we're sharing different things that are going on in our life. And it was a bit vulnerable, especially for those people who might have like family situations that they're going through, either talking about things with their kids or with a partnership. That I always like to check in and just see where there's other like main characters that you're talking about. You want to be thoughtful about what it is that you share, but it is part, I think, of what we can understand in each other's shared humanity. And it's like like David's saying, it's interesting to me. I always have this thing whenever I'm going and looking at, a company and look at their about page, like immediately I'm like, what's the founder story? Who are they? Like, what's interesting about them? And when you have those sort of generic, like, we are dedicated to, excellent customer service or something, it's like there's no there. You really want to know the nuance of who somebody is. But when we think about it relationally, and also just think about it in the dimension of the way in which stories are told, I think about it, the situation for my kids now, at 18 and 21, and just how much their life has been like documented, the awareness that they have on social, which I think has really influenced even the way that they show up. Like, remember you and me, David, like think about those wild times that we had. I have a feeling you and I were similar that way, in our teen years. We're like, there is not one like slight recording of any of that, whether we were, wasted dancing somewhere or, whatever the thing was. The whole way I think that the younger generation is being, documented, the awareness they have about how they're showing up, a whole, sense of cringe and, not cringe, like their dimensions as we look at it generationally that do impact the quality of our life and what we share. So I think it for me, it's important to say, like, for me as a almost 60-year-old person, this year I turned 60. And it's like there's a huge liberation. I'm like, if you don't know me by now, like Patti LaBelle says, like you're never gonna know me. And I love just having an open book and sharing what's going on. I think it's a little bit different when you might be of a different generation or maybe have different life circumstances that can feel a little bit more vulnerable. If you're, I work for myself. People who work as employees sometimes have to be thoughtful about what they share, in a dicey environment. So I think there's a lot of nuance to it.
I think one of the things that excites me just about authenticity as a practice is that's where the change and the evolution happens. David, I know you speak with Tony Robbins a lot. Can you talk more about like that is an event that's set up to help people change their lives, right? And you're talking about business and messaging and curious about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins, if you haven't experienced one of his events, is truly remarkable. His production value is out of control. It's like a full-on Rolling Stones concert production value, which is great. But I think that word authentic that we keep coming back to is something that Tony is. And if you're up on that stage and there's several thousand people who paid a lot of money to be there to see you, you've got to deliver. Whether that's Tony or his guest speakers, like I've been a guest speaker at his Business Mastery program now for 12 years. You've got to really be on that game. And I think what's interesting about you talking about the part one of the book, which I looked at this morning, as well as thinking back to my own dig process. If you don't come at that from a perspective of knowing who you are and And obviously, Erin, you guide us through that, and the book guides us through that. But you've really got to open up and understand that. And when I'm on that Tony Robbins stage, or when other speakers who are successful who are on that Tony Robbins stage, they really have to know, I am going to do this. I can't copy Tony. There's only one Tony Robbins in this world. And I can't do the things that he does, but I can do the things that work for me. And I've seen many, many, many speakers over the more than a decade that I've done presentations with him. It's probably 30 presentations now on his stages, who come in with guns blazing, and I'm a professional speaker, I've got all these books, I'm a New York Times bestseller. And then they either present in an inauthentic way, or they try to present in a way that they feel is a Tony Robbins style. And those people aren't invited back. And that's fascinating to me. But the ones who come in and say, I've got this tremendous, and both Pam and Erin know this, it's a gift to have a stage. I'm presented with this incredible gift of a Tony Robbins stage, or any stage that I'm speaking at. And I've got to come at it and bring myself, my authentic self, my personality, my passions, because that comes through, that breaks through people who are maybe looking at their phones, or maybe want to go to the bathroom, or maybe want to get a sandwich, and then, oh, okay, I'm going to put my phone down. I can hold my pee. I can wait to get my sandwich, and pay attention to you. So yeah, I've learned a lot watching Tony, and then also participating in those events, because it is world class, top notch. It is any one of those buzzwords you want to pull out. That's what those events are.
Awesome. Thank you. Pam, what advice do you have for anybody who's wanting to take their body of work and just put it out into the world in an authentic way?
The ironically, the book I'm writing right now is called "Remember Who You Are," so it's all very germane. So the connection that I see is very much in this thread of what you're working on with a dig, which is that when you both make choices about what you choose to create, what do you want to put forth? All of us as we go through time, if you've been in business a long time, it's like, what is my focus area? What kind of program am I interested in? What do I want to work on? When you do think about it first in the context of who you are, the core essence of who you are, your word, how you're wired, what's important to you, I think that is going to be a critical ingredient, as opposed to just scanning and saying, oh no, like the topic I have been speaking on is maybe drying up. And so what's the hot new thing, and how can I just connect to it? If it really doesn't come from a point of natural curiosity and interest, I think that's the thing. I kept thinking, as David was talking about, it's like a resonance. It's really like a musical resonance when you can see people on a different stage, and there could be somebody who has a totally different tone. It's like maybe you have Bruno Mars, like the whole dance routine coming, and then you have a very thoughtful, like quiet, jazz saxophone player who just makes the whole room just completely stop and feel moved, powerful in its own way, because somebody is really delivering their own work that is connected to who they are and what they feel, and what's of interest to them. So the choice you make about what you bring forward is really important. And then the thing that I've just been really reflecting on as I've been writing is also about the way that you think about the formats and the specific way that you might do your work. I know for me, like I am really relational. Like everything about the first choices that I make, it is all about relationships. I have long-term relationships, strong connections with folks, with my clients. It's not uncommon to like say, I love you at the end of a call, like without even thinking about it, right? And it's like, that's just part of the way that I really get to know people that I work with over a deep period of time. And so in thinking about the packaging, the way to deliver something, sometimes as entrepreneurs, I think we are thinking about it from our own perspective of like, okay, I want passive revenue, so let me do a membership program where I can just, have people sign up and I can have as little connection as possible. If you are somebody who is wired like me to be highly relational, to love those deep in-person conversations, you're probably not going to create the best membership model possible, right? You want to be thinking about it in the context of how are you choosing people to work with who will be related to the ways that you like to deliver things, and then in the kind of packaging and mechanism, that's going to be super interesting. So like, now I'm leading retreats in like a chateau in France because I'm getting there as often as I can. My daughter's going to school in Paris. I love it. I live
Great.
now it's just me. And so it's like, what can be interesting ways of bringing a highly relational, interesting way to work that you're doing so that it can be really connected. And I just think we have to think about who we are, and then we think about who we really want to work with, and then make sure that the means of communicating it is tied to what we like to do best.
I love that point of like, not only is what we say and what we put out into the world need to be authentic, but like how we do it too. Like, and that's lifestyle. That's hours. That's energy flow. So thank you for bringing that up. David, do you have any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are great book. Thank you for writing it. Go through the process if you haven't done it already. It's really eye-opening, and you can sort of carry your word in your pocket and bring it around with you in your life. And if you're having a tough time, it's like just remember that word, and maybe that gets you a little bit stronger. Or if you're faced with a difficult situation, you remember that word. So thanks for doing this, Erin, and for everything that you do. You are truly an authentic person.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, and thank you both. They both gave me blurbs for the book. So I'm just very grateful. So, all right, everybody, we're going to roll into a break for the next 8 minutes until the top of the hour. So thank you to our guests, Pamela and David, and I'll see you at the top of the hour.